So some final thoughts. Always remember that the most important things in life are your faith, your family, your friends. Now when I say faith, I don't necessarily mean religious faith, just whatever belief system that you subscribe to. But faith, family, friends, these are the values that make up who you are. Now you notice that I did not put up anything there about work. And there's a reason for that. I'm not going to lie to you, this is a very demanding job. It's going to demand a lot of your time, it's going to demand a lot of your energy, and it's going to demand a lot of your efforts. But at the end of the day, this job is simply something that you do. This job, or any job for that matter, does not define who you are. Because when it's all said and done, no one ever looks back on their life and says to themselves, wow, I really wish I had spent more time at work. Trust me, no one ever says that. Saying no. Hey, you know what? Really good thing working at Deloitte, there's so many initiatives and activities you can get involved in and really make an impact. Really bad thing about Deloitte, there's so many initiatives and activities you can get involved in that it's really hard to know what to focus on. A really common problem I see with a lot of first-year BTAs is that they'll sign up for any activity that looks somewhat interesting, and before they know it, they've got like 7 or 8 different things on their plate on top of their client work. Always remember that this job is a marathon, not a sprint. You don't have to say yes to everything. It is okay to say no. I would prefer you to focus in on 1 or 2 things that you are very passionate about, rather than try to juggle 10 or 12 different things and not be able to give your full effort on anything. Always remember that the most valuable commodity you possess is your time. You can always make more money, you can always find another job, you can always acquire more material possessions, but the one thing you can never get more of is more time. You know, life is not like a football game. There's not an official scorekeeper that's going to tell you how much time you got left. No one's going to give you a 2-minute warning to let you know that your time is about to run out. 1 second, you're going to feel like you have all the time in the world. The next second, you'll have run out of time. And no matter how much time you've got, you'll always wish you had just a little bit more. I remember when I was a little boy, I used to ask my dad to tell me stories about his father, my grandfather, who had passed away many, many years before I was born. And whenever he talked about him, the one thing he always said was, you know, son, I would give anything to be able to talk to him for 5 more minutes. And someday, when I'm dead and gone, you will understand what I'm talking about. And you know what? He was right. My dad passed away 6.5 years ago. And I would give anything to be able to talk to my dad again, just one more time, for 5 more minutes. Cherish, value, and protect the time that you've been given. Last but not least, have fun. There is a reason why the coaches on this program are so committed and passionate, because they all remember what it was like to be consulting analysts and all the fun times that they had. I remember all the great project team activities we used to do. Like the one time I was staffed on a project in Pittsburgh, PA. And the project was 50% people from the US and 50% people from Europe, Canada, and Mexico. And every Wednesday evening, we would have a soccer match. It'd be USA versus the world. And I'll readily admit, the players on the world side, they had a lot more skill. But the players on the US side, we were a lot more aggressive. I guess it's kind of like real life, right? So, yeah, a little bit of a political joke there, I guess, right? So, I remember all the fun alternative travel trips we used to take and all the shenanigans we'd get into. Like the one time my buddies and I went to London, England for 36 hours. And I remember going through the UK customs line, and the UK customs official looked at my itinerary and said, okay, let me get this straight. You're flying here from the States, from Texas. You're spending 36 hours in London, and then you're flying straight back to the States to Chicago. And I was like, oh yeah, it's a really long story. After I said that, he stopped, he looked at me, he leaned back in his chair, and he said, well, lad, I've got plenty of time. Let's hear it. All right. Side note, never tell a customs official, oh yeah, it's a really long story. Just trust me on that. Don't do it. So I started telling, hey, I'm a technology consultant, travel a lot for my job. I have this thing called alternative travel, and I got an alternative travel budget I can use. My buddies and I, we found a really cheap airfare to London. We're going to come over here, rage for 36 hours. And I talked about all the frequent flyer miles I was going to pick up. It was going to be awesome, right? And after I was finished my story, he looked at me and he said, you crazy Americans, you're always doing these silly things. Stamp my passport and send me on the way. I remember all the wild stories that can only happen to you when you're a traveling consultant. Like the one time I got pulled over by a state trooper in the state of Indiana. And I will readily admit that state trooper had me dead to rights. Reckless driving, speeding, running a stop sign, and evading arrest. Okay, that was a really long story how I found myself in that situation. Let's just say it involved me, an Indian dude, and this guy from Russia on a work visa who I'm pretty sure had done some very, very questionable things in his past. Anyways, so when that state trooper finally caught up to me, he found out that I had a driver's license from the state of Texas. I was driving a rental car that I had picked up in the state of Kentucky. I was staying at a hotel across the Ohio River in Cincinnati, Ohio. And he had pulled me over next to some small town in Indiana. So I handed him over all the documentation that I had, even my hotel key card. He took a look at it all. He said, okay. He went back to his car. He was there for about a good 15 minutes or so. Came back. The first thing he did was check me out to make sure I wasn't drunk, which I was not, by the way. But after he's done checking me out, he looked at me and he goes, well, son, I have absolutely no idea how I would fill out all the paperwork associated with this. And even if I did fill out all this paperwork, you and I both know that you ain't coming back. And I was like, yeah, he was right about that. Like, if I had no intention of ever stepping foot inside the state of Indiana ever again. Like, if I ever ran for president of the United States, I'd be like, Indiana, why don't we just focus on the other 49 states? Whatever. So he looked at me again and goes, so son, I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to let you off with a warning. Just please try to drive a little bit safer next time. I was like, oh yeah, I can definitely do that. And I remember all the really, really stupid things I did as an analyst. Like the one time I was working on a project and I estimated I had about 16 hours of work to do on a Monday in order to prepare for some client workshops later that week. But the Dallas Cowboys were playing on Monday Night Football, and I wanted to watch the game live on television. All right, so back in those days, we didn't have things like video on demand or TiVos or DVRs. So if you didn't watch the game live, the only way you found out what happened was by reading the newspaper the next day. I know, it kind of sounds like the dark ages, right? So there it was, 16 hours of work on a Monday, Dallas Cowboys, Monday Night Football. So do you want to know what I did? I showed up to work Monday morning, 1 a.m. And I pounded out those 16 hours of work. And I got home in time to watch the Dallas Cowboys on Monday Night Football. And after the game was over, I passed out. And looking back on it, you know what? That was really, really stupid, right? But it was also a lot of fun. Have fun. Hey, this job is really, really, really intense. There's going to be a lot of days where you're going to go back to your apartment or go back to your hotel room, and you're going to say to yourself, wow, that was a really, really shitty day. But I guarantee you there's going to be a lot more days when you're going to be looking at the work that you're doing, looking at the people that you're working with, and you're going to say to yourself, wow, I'm really glad I'm here as an ETA at Deloitte. And there's no other place that I would rather be. My wish for each and every single one of you is that 20 years from now, when you look back on your careers, you remember your time as a Deloitte ETA, and you'll say to yourself, wow, you know, that job was pretty tough, but I learned a lot, I made some great lifelong friends, but most importantly, I had a lot of fun. And hopefully you'll pick up a few funny stories along the way to share with the next generation of consulting analysts. One last story before we go. So everyone here is going to be traveling for work, traveling for training, traveling for project work, et cetera, et cetera. Inevitably, when you travel for business, you're going to run into some travel snafus, right? Flights that get delayed, reservations that get misplaced, hotels that get overbooked, and perhaps the most critical of all, the flight that gets canceled, right? Everyone hates that canceled flight. Well, if one of these travel snafus happens to you, just take it in stride. Because, not every canceled flight is a bad thing. I remember one time when I was staffed in Southern California, I was trying to get back home on a Thursday afternoon. And I remember being in the middle of LAX airport. I looked up at the flight status monitor, and my flight back home to Dallas had been canceled. So I got on the phone from American Airlines. I was trying to get back home, trying to find another flight. But it was Easter weekend, and every single flight was booked solid. So I was like, okay, so I'm here in LAX. What if I drive down to Orange County Airport? No. Flights are booked solid. Okay. What if I go to Burbank Airport? No. What if I go to Long Beach Airport? No. Okay, San Diego is only 60 miles away. What if I drive all the way to San Diego? And he said, no, sir, I'm sorry. All the flights are booked solid until Sunday morning. Looks like you're going to be stuck in Los Angeles for a couple extra days. So I hung up the phone. But you know what? Thanks to that canceled flight, I met a very, very special woman. And 2 years later, that special woman became my wife. And now we have 2 kids. All thanks to a canceled flight. But that story of how I met my wife, well, that's a story for another day. Welcome to Deloitte.